There's one thing you can do that reaches him in a place your words never could. Not anger, not confrontation, not explanations, not tears, not closure talks. Something far more powerful. Something he can't ignore. Something he feels in his chest, in his ego, and in the silence that follows. Ready? Here it is. Stop responding in the ways he's always counted on. Because the moment you stop feeding the version of you he took for granted is the moment he's forced to confront the version of him he's been hiding from. This is where it begins. He didn't notice the damage while he was causing it. He didn't notice the way your tone changed, the way your body tensed, the way your eyes lost their shine. Every time he dismissed you, every time he minimized your feelings, every time he acted like your love was just something that would always be there waiting for him. He didn't notice because he didn't have to. Not when you were the one who always showed up, who always forgave, who always explained what he should have already understood. You were predictable in your softness. He relied on it. He depended on it. He expected it. And that expectation became entitlement. He got used to you, absorbing the hurt instead of acknowledging it. He got used to you, carrying the emotional weight instead of confronting him. He got used to you, doing the emotional labor of both people. But here's the truth he never saw coming. When someone loves hard, their turning point isn't loud. It's quiet, silent, subtle, but it changes everything. Because when a person like you finally gets tired, not angry, not bitter, not vengeful, just tired, that's when the shift happens. And that shift is the one thing he can't ignore. It starts small. You stop repeating yourself. You stop asking him to care. You stop trying to explain why something hurt you. You stop breaking yourself open just to make him understand. Basic emotional awareness. You stop being the woman he's used to, the woman he depended on, the woman he took for granted. You stop responding to the old pattern, the pattern he created, the pattern he benefited from. And suddenly, the silence hits him. Not the silence where you hope he notices. Not the silence that comes from wanting him to chase you. Not the silence that's secretly a test. No, this silence comes from self-respect, from clarity, from peace, from being done with the versions of conversations that left you drained and him unchanged. This silence isn't about him. It's about you. And that is why it affects him. Because silence from a woman who has always communicated hurts more than any words she could ever speak. Because silence from someone he thought would always be available forces him to notice every place he failed you. Because silence removes the excuses he used to hide behind. He can't blame you when you're not arguing. He can't accuse you of being too emotional when you're not reacting. He can't pretend he doesn't know what you mean when you've stopped explaining altogether. Silence makes him sit with himself. And trust me, that is the one place he never wanted to go. Because inside that silence is the truth. He hurt someone who would have never hurt him. He lost the person who would have never lost him. He pushed away the very love he kept wishing for. In every past relationship, he realizes he was careless with the one heart that genuinely cared for him. But here's the part he never considered. Once you stop engaging in the old pattern, he can no longer hide from his role in the story. Because now the space speaks. The silence speaks. Your absence speaks. Your neutrality speaks. Your lack of reaction speaks louder than your pain ever did. He feels it. The shift, the distance, the loss of emotional access he once had. This is the moment the mirror turns. Instead of you questioning yourself, he begins questioning himself. Instead of you overthinking what you did wrong, he starts replaying what he did. Instead of you trying to understand him, he starts realizing he never tried to understand you. This is how it begins. Not with confrontation, not with dramatic exits, not with emotional monologues, but with a quiet change in the way you show up, or rather, the way you stop showing up. Because when you stop pouring into the dynamic that kept you hurting, he is forced to finally feel the discomfort he used to escape. That discomfort is the doorway. That discomfort is the awakening. That discomfort is the moment he finally begins to recognize exactly how he hurt you, not through explanation, not through confrontation, but through the one thing he never expected from you, a shift in your energy that speaks louder than your pain ever did. When someone hurts you and never apologizes, never acknowledges it, never even flinches at the pain they caused, it's easy to believe the only way they'll ever understand is if you confront them, explain everything, spell it out, force the truth into their hands. But here's the truth most people never want to hear. The moment he actually recognizes how deeply he hurt you isn't when you explain it. It's when you stop explaining anything at all. Because the thing that wakes him up isn't your emotional essays, isn't your long messages, isn't your attempts to make him understand. It's the moment you stop giving him access to the version of you he took for granted. That's the thing he feels. Not the arguments, not the tears, not the conversations that went nowhere. He feels the shift. He feels the silence. He feels the absence of the woman who used to soften everything for him. Most men don't understand loss in the moment they cause it. They understand it in the moment they realize they no longer have control over the impact. And that moment happens when you pull your energy back without warning, without drama, without explanation, when the calls stop, when the effortless emotional nurturing stops, when the door he assumed was always open finally closes, not with anger, but with certainty. And he notices, because silence isn't emptiness. It's pressure. It's truth. It's a mirror he can't look away from. Your silence is the moment he finally sits alone with the consequences of everything he dismissed. He replay the moments he brushed off, the words you said that he didn't take seriously, the needs you whispered that he ignored. He'll revisit the times you tried to hold things together while he gave the bare minimum. And suddenly, it won't feel not that deep anymore. It will feel real, heavy, unavoidable. That's what silence does. It forces a man to face himself without the comfort of your presence smoothing everything over. Because when you keep reaching out, even with pain in your voice, he still feels chosen, still feels wanted, still feels safe in the belief that you're not going anywhere. But when you stop chasing understanding and start choosing peace, that's when the shift hits him hard. Because now he has to consider a version of life where you aren't available, a version of himself where he has to live with what he broke, a version of love where the woman he thought would always care finally removed her hands from the emotional work he never appreciated. That's what he feels. Not guilt when you explain the pain, but fear when you stop explaining anything. Because here's what most men won't admit. They don't truly value what your presence gives until they lose access to the emotional safety you provided without question. And your silence is the moment he realizes he's no longer entitled to your softness. He starts wondering, did she stop caring? Did I push her too far? Is she done? Did she wake up to how badly I treated her? Is she finally seeing my flaws? Your silence becomes his loudest consequence, not as punishment, not as manipulation, not as a game, but as a boundary that forces him to feel what he made you feel. The uncertainty, the confusion, the distance, the emotional hunger of wanting something that won't come back on command. He finally realizes the pain he caused when he feels it reflected back at him, not by revenge, but by your absence. Because nothing teaches a man faster than losing access to the woman who made his life feel softer. Nothing wakes him up faster than seeing you pull away, not in anger, but in self-respect. Nothing humbles him faster than realizing the love he underestimated is no longer waiting at the door for him to choose it. He finally sees your worth when he feels the weight of life without you. He finally understands the damage when he feels the silence you once begged him to fill. He finally sees the truth when he no longer gets to hide behind the comfort of knowing you're always there. And that's the moment, the exact moment. He recognizes the hurt he caused, not when you talk, but when you stop, not when you demand accountability, but when you withdraw your care, not when you try to fix him, but when you finally choose to fix yourself. This is the one thing that makes him realize everything. You stop holding the emotional door open and quietly lock it behind your healing. He never expected you to stop explaining. He never expected you to stop arguing. He never expected you to stop trying to make him understand what he kept refusing to face. Because for so long, you filled in the gaps. You made excuses. You softened your tone. You absorbed the impact of his dismissiveness just to keep the peace. And he got used to that. He got used to you being the emotional translator for the things he refused to acknowledge. He got used to you breaking yourself down into smaller versions just so he wouldn't feel overwhelmed. But here's the shift he never saw coming. You finally realize that the one thing that forces a man to confront the truth is not another speech, not another explanation, not another emotional breakdown. It's your silence, but not the silence of anger, not the silence of punishment, not the silence of manipulation. It's the silence that comes from clarity, from self-respect, from emotional exhaustion, that finally turned into wisdom. The silence that says, I'm not fighting for you to understand me anymore. Because that version of silence hits differently. It's the silence that makes him replay things, re-examine things, refeel things he tried to brush aside. It's the silence that turns his confidence into doubt, that turns his avoidance into discomfort, that turns his nonchalance into restlessness. Because when a woman who once cared loudly begins to care quietly, a man feels it in a way he can't ignore. He feels it when your responses stop carrying emotional weight. He feels it when your energy stops reaching for him. He feels it when the comfort of your love no longer cushions his behavior. You become a mirror he can't look away from, not because you're trying to teach him a lesson, but because your shift reveals the truth. He hurt someone who actually loved him. And now, in the space your silence creates, he can finally hear the sound of his own actions. He hears how dismissive he was. He hears how careless he sounded. He hears the moments where he should have stayed, should have listened, should have protected you. Instead of protecting his pride, your silence forces him to sit with the version of himself he showed you. And he doesn't like it. That discomfort he feels, that heaviness in his chest, that sudden need to rethink everything, that's accountability knocking on his door. Not because you forced it, but because, for the first time, you stopped cushioning it. The absence of your effort becomes the presence of truth. The absence of your warmth becomes the presence of reflection. The absence of your explanations becomes the presence of consequences. And here's the part men don't expect. When a woman pulls back, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect, something inside them shifts. It interrupts their pattern. It disrupts their ego. It dismantles the version of themselves they were comfortable with. He begins to recognize just how deeply you were giving, just how consistently you were showing up, just how much your love held the connection together. The thing you did, the thing that makes him finally see the hurt he caused, wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional warfare. It was simply this. You stopped overgiving to someone who kept underperforming. And when that balance breaks, reality hits him harder than any words ever could. He realizes you weren't too emotional. You were invested. You weren't too sensitive. You were intuitive. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking for reciprocity. You weren't hard to love. He was unprepared to love you well. And now, with the noise gone, with your energy withdrawn, with your heart no longer doing the emotional labor, he finally sees the truth he once avoided. The way he treated you was never a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of his emotional limitations. And losing your effort is what exposes it. Because men don't realize how deeply they were held until the hands holding them go still. They don't realize how much care they received until the care disappears. They don't realize how much light you brought until they're standing in the dimness of their own actions. Your silence is not revenge. It's revelation. And trust me, he feels it, not because you forced him to, but because you finally stopped absorbing the pain he never had to face. Until now, you want to know what really forces a man to face the pain he caused you? It's not shouting, not repeating yourself, not proving a point. It's not emotional essays he won't read. It's not begging him to finally understand your heart. It's not giving him more love, hoping he'll wake up. The truth is painfully simple. The moment he feels what life is like, without the version of you he took for granted, his clarity arrives like a punch. Men don't wake up when you demand change. They wake up when the loss finally lands. And it doesn't land when you leave dramatically. It lands when you stop pouring your energy into someone who didn't know how to hold it. When you stop explaining, stop defending, stop stretching your heart to make up for where he shrinks. When you quietly return to yourself, that's the one thing that makes him see. Because your absence says what your words never could. Your silence creates a contrast he can't escape. He remembers how peaceful you felt, how safe your presence was, how your voice softened the parts of him he never showed anyone. He remembers how your love made him feel chosen, even on the days he didn't choose himself. And suddenly, he feels the emptiness of a world where your warmth is no longer available on demand. Not because you're angry, not because you're punishing him, but because you finally realized you can't save someone who is willing to let you drown, to keep themselves afloat. He feels the shift. He feels the difference. He feels the loss, even if he pretends he doesn't. The texts feel colder now. Your energy feels lighter. Your boundaries feel different. And deep down, he knows why. You're no longer trying to convince him of your worth. You're letting him discover it without your help. And that is the moment everything changes. Men recognize their damage when they finally witness what life looks like without the woman who kept choosing them. He'll notice that the emotional space you used to fill is now empty. He'll notice that the attention he once took for granted no longer belongs to him. He'll notice that your kindness doesn't reach him the way it used to. You're still kind, but the energy is not his anymore. And nothing shakes a man harder than realizing he lost access to the version of you that loved him the deepest, because that version doesn't return. Once it learns the truth, he'll replay the moments he dismissed, the times he ignored you, the times he chose pride over connection, the times his silence hurt you more than honesty ever could. And for the first time, he'll feel it, not intellectually, emotionally. And that is the difference. Men don't understand what they've done until they feel what they've broken. You can't teach him that. Life teaches him that. Your absence teaches him that. You being unreachable teaches him that. Not because you're cold, not because you're cruel, but because you finally realized your heart deserves someone who shows up fully, not someone who wakes up only after the damage is done. He will feel the weight of every soft thing you gave him. He will compare everyone to what you made him feel. He will wonder why he pushed away the one person who actually cared. And that is when the truth hits him. He didn't just lose you, he lost the version of himself he could only access when he was loved by you. That's the moment he finally sees how deeply he hurt you, not because you reminded him, but because your healing exposed his harm. And there is nothing more undeniable than that. You want to know what finally makes a man truly see what he did to you? Not anger, not confrontation, not long messages explaining your pain. It's what comes after you've tried everything. It's what rises in you when you're too tired to prove your worth to someone who already knew it and took advantage anyway. It's not cruelty. It's not revenge. It's not manipulation. It's something quieter, heavier, more powerful. It's the moment you stop bleeding for the lesson he refuses to learn. It's the moment you stop carrying the responsibility for a wound you didn't cause. It's the moment you stop trying to get him to understand and start choosing yourself instead. Because every man who hurt a woman who genuinely loved him has one thing in common. He only recognizes her value when she finally chooses her peace over the chaos he kept offering. And that moment changes everything. Not because you punish him, not because you play games, not because you pretend you don't care, but because you show him, maybe for the first time, what your life looks like when he no longer has access to the parts of you he took for granted. That's the moment his distractions stop working. His ego stops protecting him. His excuses stop convincing him. And the truth finally lands. He hurt the one person who actually cared. So let's go deeper. Let's talk about the one thing that makes him finally recognize the impact of his actions. It's not silence. Silence can be a game. It's not distance. Distance can be temporary. It's not indifference. Indifference can be faked. It's something far more real, far more confronting, far more undeniable. You stop waiting for him and start healing without him. That's what breaks him, because healing changes your energy. When you heal, you stop responding the same. You stop apologizing just to keep the peace. You stop shrinking just to be tolerable. You stop accepting crumbs because he calls them effort. You stop holding on to potential and start requiring reality. And the version of you he hurt no longer exists. You know what terrifies him? Not losing you. Not at first. That realization comes later. What scares him most is realizing he no longer affects you the way he used to. Because here's the truth most men won't admit. A man doesn't realize he shattered something valuable until he realizes he no longer has the power to break it again. Pain wakes him up, only when you stop carrying it. Regret hits him only when you no longer feel it. Clarity reaches him only when you detach. Because your healing forces him to see his actions through a mirror he can't avoid anymore. You're not begging. You're not explaining. You're not chasing closure from someone incapable of giving it. You're doing the one thing he never expected. You're giving your closure to yourself. And when a woman does that, when she stops trying to convince a man to treat her better, when she stops waiting for him to grow, when she stops blaming herself for the wounds he caused, when she stops believing his potential instead of his patterns, he feels it. It hits his ego first, then his memory, then his chest, then his nights, then his silence, then his regrets. And suddenly, the woman he dismissed becomes the woman he cannot stop thinking about, because now he feels the shift. Your energy no longer bends toward him. Your heart no longer shines for him. Your softness is no longer accessible. Your effort is no longer guaranteed. And your love, the same love he toyed with, is no longer in his hands. That's the moment he finally recognizes exactly how he hurt you, because he realizes he didn't just lose you, he lost the version of you who still believed he wouldn't. So here's the truth you need to hear. You don't need revenge to make him regret. You don't need manipulation for him to understand. You don't need to prove what he refused to cede. You just need to choose your healing over his chaos, your growth over his avoidance, your peace over his inconsistency, your future over his patterns. And when you do, he'll feel it in ways he will never admit out loud, in ways he cannot escape, in ways he will remember long after you've stopped remembering him. Because the one thing that makes a man finally see your value is losing access to the version of you who tolerated being undervalued. But listen carefully. Don't do it to make him regret. Do it because you finally understand what he never did. Your heart was never the problem. His inability to handle it was. So choose yourself now. Choose your healing. Choose your peace. Choose your standards. Choose a life where you are not waiting for someone who had every chance and still didn't rise. And if this message spoke to your spirit today, let this be your sign to stop hurting over someone who was never your safe place and start becoming the safe place you deserve. If you felt this, if it resonated, if it hit a truth you needed to hear, share it, save it, and remember, your worth is not up for negotiation.